Hi, and welcome to the Father-Daughter Experience. I'm Cesare.
And I'm Celia.
And today we're going to talk about advice. We've had this come up a bunch when we talk to friends and family, when it comes to having the conversation around, like, do you talk to your parents? When do you talk to family about advice? When do you take it? What do you ask about? When do you not really want advice, but maybe more of a sounding board? So we thought we would delve into that a little bit today. And I think let's start with the why. So why do you feel comfortable coming to us, your parents, me specifically, I guess, for advice? Like, why do you feel that level of comfort?
Well, I mean, I think it's to be honest, I didn't used to come to you for advice, and we can talk about that more in the when section of our episode.
Sure.
But I think something like when I talk to my friends and I say like, oh, I talk to my parents about like basically everything in my life, people are like, why? Like, that's so spooky. I wouldn't trust my parents, like, as far as I could throw them, which isn't far at all. But I think from a young age, you and mom were always very candid about things with me, whether it was stuff going on in the family or stuff going on in your lives or with work or like me in school or money or things like that. Like, I feel like you always treated me with respect when it came to like sensitive things or like not sensitive things too, like normal, like day-to-day stuff. So when I would go through hard things on my own, it just already felt like, oh, my parents are very like honest and open with me about hard things, about easy things, and they communicate in a easily digestible manner.
So the idea of trust. So essentially, like,
because
you
we're
trusted
being me, like.
Right.
Even when I was younger, like I was an adult or like I was mature enough and old enough to handle hard conversations. So then when I had hard conversations of my own that I was like wanting to bring up to you guys, I think I already sort of like had the toolkit.
So, or do you think it's more of a generational thing because we're closer in age? And so like recently, your mother was talking to a former colleague, friend of hers, and it turns out that at 41 and 43, her and her husband just had a baby in September. And so thinking about the fact like that I could have a newborn right now would seem totally crazy to me. And I know some people, wait and they have kids a little bit, later in their 30s and into their early 40s. But I think at that point we were just talking to somebody not too long ago who was basically saying, I'm having kids at 40 something. We actually were at Matt and Mary's, our friends, Mary's birthday party. And one of the couples that was there essentially said, if I live much beyond my kids being in high school, like that'll be great. Cause they were like 42 having kids and they were like, well, I'll be 60 something.
Yeah.
So like, they're already looking at it like, by the time I won't make it to my kid's 40th birthday was the conversation. So do you feel like there's that component of it too, that there's a little bit of a familiarity or a comfort level because we're not that far removed from some of the things that you're experiencing. And now that you're getting older, they're starting to overlap, right? We're having the same types of adult problems. Mm-hmm. So do you think like that's a factor in terms of like the why, or do you think that's more the when?
No, I think it's part of the why. Honestly, yes, I think that there are some things we have more in common. Also, your understanding of technology, I think, is a lot more advanced than a lot of like my friends. So like when I've had like when I was younger and I was dealing with like friends, like, or not friends, I suppose, like bullying me on social media and stuff like that. Like you guys did have a little bit more knowledge of how to handle that than I think maybe some of my friends' parents would have, who are like 10, 15, 20 years older than you guys.
Just shut off the YouTube.
Right. Yeah. Like delete them. And it's like, well, that's not how that works.
Right.
But I still feel like something that maybe it's because you guys are young parents, but I do feel like I do think it just goes back to trust in terms of the why, because I have friends who don't trust their parents, who view their parents as very like destructive or bad people, or they think they're childish and immature, or they think they're bad communicators, or
sure.
they think their parents are the reason everything is wrong in their life.
So they're looking at their parents as not being good people, so I'm not going to trust
Honestly,
these people with advice.
But I also think it's that some of my friends and some people I see like on the internet, like not even people I know, when they talk about their parents, it does seem, and I can't obviously speak for every lived experience in the world, but sometimes it also feels like people don't see their parents as people.
Sure.
Like we all want to live our deeply interesting internal lives, but I think sometimes if we have negative relationships with our parents or we fight with our parents or we get into disagreements, it's hard to recognize and accept the fact that like
they have their own stories.
Yeah, yes, they're your parents, but they also had issues with their parents and disagreements with their parents, and you don't necessarily know if your parents aren't communicative with you like you guys were with me, like their take on how they were raised or how like they think maybe they're doing right by you because they're different, that like their parenting style is different than their parents. So I just think that I do see you and mom as individual people, but I also think that that is in part not even a trust thing, but it's that you and mom have just always had your own things you were pursuing or working on, and I was able, because we were close when I was younger, to see you guys doing those things. So there was never a time where I was like, my parents are just my parents and they don't have any other like personality attributes. Like
I think that's I think that was probably a conscious, there was conscious effort on our part, like we say, in terms of this type of relationship, in terms of having a strong father-daughter relationship or parent-child relationship, that you have to be willing to have those conversations and, be a little bit vulnerable and be honest, right? Like any other like any other relationship, right? If you have friendships, there are people that like you want to feel like your friends are honest with you and that your friends trust you and that your friends are, being their authentic selves around you. So I think, we obviously we haven't shared everything in our lives with you, but I think we make sure that like if it affects our family, that those are things that we talk about or we address or, we have discussions around, family health issues or, family, kind of like personal issues between family members and all of those types of things. Absolutely. We definitely discuss. Yes. So I think your point is valid in terms of feeling that trust because of the way that it was presented to you. And then I think you make a good point about just needing to view your parents as people. And maybe that's something that comes naturally for some people as they get older. I think as a teenager matures into a young adult, you start to see your parents more as people because they're no longer the percentage of time that they are now parenting you versus interacting with you.
Right.
I think, that starts to, that percentage starts to
shift.
Yeah.
Well, I also think my sort of final thought on the maybe like the why we get along so well, and then we can move into sort of like a when I come to you or don't for advice, is that I think something I'll note for people who maybe don't have great relationships with their parents is that I still think it's important to recognize that your parents are people outside of their relationship with you.
Sure.
Because sometimes that can inform, it doesn't excuse bad parenting or absentee parenting or having like a bad relationship. But sometimes it does give you at least like a clue into like, at least I kind of understand why they are this way. Sure. Or at least like I can, maybe we don't have a heart to heart and my mom doesn't tell me like every reason she doesn't talk to me or doesn't call or doesn't remember my birthday or whatever your mom does that you don't like, or your dad or your parent. But sometimes I think it is helpful, at least for like moving on and or maybe accepting and saying like, I can make peace with this.
Walk in their shoes, try and put yourself and envision like why they maybe are the way that they are.
Yeah. And then you can decide from there, like if it's worth continuing to pursue like a close relationship with a parent, or like, sometimes it's okay.
Sure.
If that's not going to be there.
All right. So let's move on to kind of like the when, right? So we talked about the why. Yes. Let's talk about the when. When do you feel comfortable, or when do you feel like this is a conversation, this is a concern of mine, this is a situation that you want to bring to us?
I think usually my initial instinct, and this has probably been for a while, honestly, I don't trust my friends with advice almost at all. I mean, like, I'll talk about stuff with my friends, but my friends give shit advice. Love you guys if you're listening. My friends don't give me good advice because I don't think friends can sometimes look at stuff outside of like objective relationships. Like in a friend group, sometimes people are trying to like protect lots of different people's feelings, whether intentionally or not.
Sure.
So advice might be really skewed. And I'm like, well, I'm looking for advice for what I should be doing. So my initial thought is, do I want to even hear my friends' opinions on this? Or do I want to go to a therapist or my parents?
Right.
And if it's a therapist, it's usually something that I'm more like, I need to work on this for like myself. And I want somebody to talk about it with me. And when it's not a therapist, it's you and mom. And I think when I come to you for stuff is that, you know, I come, will work anytime I'm applying. Oh, here, I'll go through my categories. My first one would be work.
Sure.
When I'm looking for a new job, when I'm trying to step up my resume, when I have an interview, when I am trying to feel prepared for like a next step in my career, I've just always come to you.
Sure.
And even when I talk to mom, sometimes mom will be like, "Oh, your dad would be like a really good sounding board for that." So you've jumped jobs, you've changed paths, like what type of like industries you work in before. So it's like I think it's easy to talk to you about like what I want to do and how to excel at it, even if you don't necessarily understand every nuance of my career path.
Sure.
You have a really good bird's eye view of like career jumping and career development.
I can address the minutia of the situation.
Yeah.
It's not specific to yours, but I can basically say, hey, this template is going to be the same.
Yeah.
Like all of these
And like this works.
career transitions,
This is
interviews.
what people want to hear.
Right. This is how you can.
This is how you should negotiate salary or talk
right.
about
Those are
or how to accept an offer or questions you should ask and consider like before you take your next job.
Sure, because again, it's like the idea of, you know, working with any type of coach, right? You work with a coach
Yeah.
who's done those things and had those repetitions, right? You're a rowing coach. So someone
Yes.
coming to you that wants to get better at rowing, you can do that because you're like, well, one, I rowed in college, and two, now I row, you know, professionally in terms of like you work at a gym that is rowing focused.
Yeah.
So you can give people that type of advice. You're not at that point, you are getting paid for it. But the idea for you and I think is just, I've gone through this thing so many times.
Yes.
Like the repetitions I have is like, oh, I can teach you how to do that because I've done it. And there's a lot of, I think, set standard things that people are just not comfortable doing or don't know that they have the right to do. So
Yeah.
I think jobs make a lot of sense because they're a little bit more black and white. So jobs, that's one. So
Okay. Number 2, I would say relationships as like an umbrella.
sure.
Because I think dating is in there. But I would say I come to you and mom less about like dating stuff because I think dating things at the end of the day, I'm going to be my like final decider on like if I like somebody or not. Like
They're almost a half and half on the listening. You want a sounding board.
Yes, and
and wanting
sometimes
advice.
Usually
That one's on the fence.
Usually it's I just want to come in and be like, this is happening. You can just know it. No opinion. Thank you. Goodbye.
Sure.
Friend stuff. I think I come to you guys a lot, both for advice, like, hey, how do I handle this? How do I set a boundary? How do I
Address this.
express that I'm upset, or express that like this really made me happy,
Sure.
or you know, the whole spectrum of emotions. And I think it's also like oh my God, this person is driving me fucking insane. Can I just bitch about it to you? But I think I come to you guys so much and probably the most about friend things because we're all so close, you have a very unique perspective on who I am as a person. My friends get one slice of the pie. If I'm a pie as a person, I would say there's probably 20% of me, realistically, that nobody has any fucking clue about except for me.
Sure.
Like the time I spend alone,
Sure, your inner
the
thoughts.
things I think about,
Right.
the things I write about, my deep dark fears, my big secret hopes, whatever.
Sure.
20% of me is probably completely in the dark for everybody except for my little noggin. Then I would say 80% you and mom have access to because you raised me from when I was little. So you've seen every iteration of my personality evolve, other than maybe like some of my relationships like in college or when I've like lived away from you and had like completely separate relationships, but like
we still hear about them. We get pieces.
Sure, you get pieces. So I would say like you guys have like 80% of the pie, whereas like most of my friends, except for my ones who've been around like the longest, like someone like Carson.
Sure.
I would say my other friends probably have like 40% to 50% of my pie.
Well, I think
you get a good general sense of who I am. I'm pretty open about the things I like and the things I don't like and all of that. But it's hard, again, to go to friends for advice on stuff because
they don't have the full picture.
Correct. And there are whole parts of my life that some friends don't have any access to.
Right.
I mean, I always say, like, I think I really thrive in one-on-one relationships because that's where I can kind of be like, here's a bunch of different slices of my life versus like in a group, you're sort of like, here's the one slice I'm giving here because you guys have these interactions.
Well,
yes.
it's almost like feeding a group of people.
It right? is, yeah.
When you're
here's
one on
this
when
one
you're
that
one on when you're
I
one
know
on one
works here. This pizza slice is delicious.
Everybody will eat
every time.
Everybody will eat cheese pizza.
Correct. Yeah.
And then the smaller the circle gets, the more once you get to the one-on-one, you can be like, hey, should we get the prosciutto?
Oh, I have this
should we get
other
the prosciutto with ham and
bring.
balsamic?
Exactly. The more zesty one, right. Dressed up one.
It's more specific.
So, pizza pie metaphor aside, I think I come to you and mom for friendship stuff a lot just because, one, you have a high level view of all of my friend relationships to some level.
We know your personality.
You know my personality. You know what like makes me happy. You know what makes me fucking angry. You know what makes me really sad.
We know when you can be irrational on certain things.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are times.
A little grudge holdy.
Yeah. Well, and I'm an Aries, so I think that's fair for me to... It's my right as an Aries to be grudge holder.
Way. Sure.
So friends and relationship stuff. I mean, dating, which I think is under the relationships umbrella, we already sort of touched on, but
well, I think the dating one is interesting, right? Because I would say it falls, like I said, it falls in between. I feel like there are times where you let us know about somebody that you might be seeing or might be dating. And then this is one where it can kind of go either way. You can just be like, this is the situation. These are the things. Mm-hmm. This is the conversation. This is my next move. This is my next move. I'm thinking about doing this. Yeah, and then I want to see what happens. And then there's occasionally a time where you'll be like, what do you think this means? Or should I be giving this person another chance? Or did I make I think recently you were in a situation where you were just like, I've made enough moves here, right? Like it was almost like that was you looking for like the okay to maybe not pursue a relationship because you're just like, no, I've done enough things here. Now the ball is in the other person's court. If they're not going to chase me, like, I'm okay, right? Like I think those are the times where sometimes you ask for advice, and other times you're just like, no, this is the way I'm doing this. This is the way I'm handling this.
Yeah, I mean, in that specific case, I think you're spot on. Yeah, because I think I'm at a point right now where dating is sort of on the back burner for me.
Sure.
Great if I like meet somebody, like I'm often on the apps, but I'm not actively like looking for anything.
I'm
busy professionally. I'm busy personally. Dating someone would add even more to that.
Some complexity.
I also want to move. I want to make moves in my life.
Sure.
So I'm like, like cool. Like dates are fun here.
You're not right now pursuing like I need a partner.
But that is so like in the specific case you're referencing though, like, I felt like he hadn't really made it even clear he was interested in me romantically.
Right. Are we bros?
Right. I was like, we're homies? In which case, like, I'm not really looking for more friends. To be completely honest.
Right. Sure.
I keep making that joke, and I think some people are like, oh, ha, 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 Celia. And I'm like, no, I don't. I know too many people. Okay? It's about to become the Hunger Games. You guys got to start fighting each other if you want to stay in my life.
Again, I was hopeful, at least for you, just because I felt like, oh well, here's a dude who at least would probably cosplay and go to some cons with you.
Oh, for sure. I thought we were bros or something, and then it was like, oh my bad, I'm busy, and then you guys were like, oh no.
Yeah, I think it was you were busy, he was busy. It just and it's like
and like I said, I think
if you're not
and
you're not pursuing it.
I am looking a little bit for effort. Like I'll put out effort here and there, and then I did for a little bit, and then when you don't receive it back, you have to make some decisions. So there is definitely, I think you said like earlier, I don't actually remember how you phrased it, but irrationality. Sometimes there are times where I'm like, I get so in my head about something, and then I actually just talk about it with you guys, and I'm like, oh, I'm overreacting. Or, oh, this actually isn't that deep. And then sometimes I like talk to you guys and you guys are like, yeah, like, what the fuck? That sucks. So sometimes it's just nice to come to you guys for like validation on things too.
Right.
Like, there are definitely times where like I want advice, but like I'm also coming because I kind of want to hear you guys say like, that was the right move or that was the right choice. I mean, I think a really good example of a time where I think I just never really knew where I was going to go with it. And so we just talked about it in circles was when like I broke up with my ex from college. Mm-hmm. I debated about that a really long time. We talked about it. We like ruminated on it. And then I just sort of like hit a breaking point and was like, whoops, I'm done. I think we should break up. And then that was the right decision. But then I like backtracked and was like, oh no, I think maybe I made a mistake. And then I like talked about it with you guys about like how to kind of reapproach that.
Yeah, I think that for us was that, and I think that was one of those times where for us, I think we mostly tried to stay out of it. Right?
Yeah,
so
I know. I do think you guys were kind of like ultimately like you know what's best for you.
Right. You need to have the conversations. You need to make the decision. That's not something that like we can say you should do this.
Right. Which I think is a good boundary.
I was going to say, we try, I think with anything, this goes back to the black and white nature of things. If I say this company is offering you a job and they say, this is what we want to pay you. And then I say, you need to figure out what the benefits are. And then you need to counter because you don't ever accept the first offer that someone gives you. At the very least, you ask for more money. Mm-hmm. And if they say no, that doesn't hurt you at all. The offer is still on the table. If they can come up, maybe they come up a little bit and then you're like, fuck yeah, nice. I just got another $4,000 or I got another $2,000 out of them that I wasn't going to have before if I hadn't asked the question. Right. That's easy advice. I just tell you because that's more of a directive, right?
But
that
like
is, this.
Ending a relationship.
And yeah, that's personal. That has repercussions. To date
somebody or asking somebody to like move in with you or anything like that.
I think I can give you perspective and just be like, look, from my point of view, like this is what I expect. We've made some jokey TikToks about some of the
Hinge comments.
Some of the Hinge comments, right?
Well, those are just a whole mess.
But to me, I'm putting on my like if I were trying to court your mother hat, right? Like if I was
in this day and age,
yeah. If modern times, if I wasn't just driving to your mother's house and sitting outside and waiting for her to come outside, if I could just hit her up on an app and be like, yo, you got pretty eyes and long hair and I dig it. For me, I want to see effort, right? I want to see somebody that's interested in you, like making it not like a numbers game, right? So then when you show me some of these comments and they are like, oh, this is like I took this from my clipboard and pasted it into the thing and I'm just rapid fire swiping through stuff. Right. Like
instead of like it being like, oh, like, hey, like
I read this girl's profile, like,
here's
she
something
posted
specific I have to like offer or say.
It says cats in your profile. How many are we talking here? Right. Like if you don't specifically say 2, like how many are we talking here? Because like, it's like the Dimitri Martin thing. How pretty is a girl versus how long I want to hear about her cats. Right. Like,
exactly.
Is this going to be a situation where this pretty girl has like 7 cats?
Yeah. So
I think advice is easily distributed when it's black and white, and the more complex and the more personal it gets, it's more, is this a sounding board conversation? And you and I think this is one thing that we can firmly say, that for a long time when you were younger and as our relationship has matured, I have stepped back from trying to solve your problems for you.
Yes, but
And-
we had to have a conversation about
Well,
it.
a few times, like, yes, because you got
When
to a point. You got to a point where you were just like, I need you to sometimes just listen to me, bitch.
Yeah, well, when I
Or
was
complain.
in high school, I think I kind of had this like weird, vivid memory of like one time we were talking and you had interjected, like you didn't interrupted me, but like I had sort of paused to regroup my thoughts on the story I was telling you about like a friend situation, and then you had tried to interject and be like, well, have you thought about doing, and I remember like putting my hand up and being like, I just want you to listen to me. I just want you to listen. I don't want stop. I don't want you to fix my problems. And like, and now I think it's a lot easier to just be like, hey, I'm going to tell you a story. I just want a bitch. And you can be like, okay, cool.
Right.
So you can kind of just
Or
click
I
off.
think, yeah, you'll end up saying, or like, I don't need advice here.
Or you're right. Like, I'm not looking for advice right now. I just want you to hear, like, this is something shitty somebody I care about said.
Right.
Or like, hey, like,
I read this and it made me mad.
yeah. Or like, well, you know, like I'm upset that like this happened at work or whatever. Like, I do think that again, like,
You don't need me to come in and be like, well, this is what you should say to your boss tomorrow. And this is what you should say to your
yes.
coworker who did that thing.
right.
It's-
So I do think that like, again, it's this sort of, I don't ever think we've ever had like a sit down. Sometimes I think people think boundaries is all about like, well, let's sit down and spell out what I'm okay with and what I'm not.
Right, the Magna Carta of
Right.
like, let's break down and with quill and parchment.
Right, and then we like shake on it, and it's like a pact, and we're like, okay, great,
Right.
deal.
Here are the rules of engagement going forward.
Yeah, I just think like for me, I know what I do and don't feel comfortable talking about with you guys. When most things I do feel generally comfortable with, and then I know what things I think you and Mom both have just like this good sense. Unless sometimes I do like spell it out at the start. Like I think you guys have this good sense of like, Celia, I'll give her advice here, or I think I just need to listen. Like
She's
I
just
think
on a rant.
yeah, I think we're now at like a good sort of cadence of like, you just kind of know.
I think there is times too. I think it does come with experience. So this goes back to like the repetition thing. So for people that are out there looking to develop better relationships with their children, this can really apply to anybody, their spouses, their children, their friends. You need to have those real conversations. You need to actually go through the steps of discussing things with those people that you care about in your life to figure those not quite written down rules of engagement, right? Like I'm thinking of we're all into what we do with shadows right now, and I feel like it's like I'm going to read the bylaws. Like here's all of the rules of engagement. But I think it's important that you have those conversations, because as you get to have more of those conversations, you start to build that type of nonverbal communication where you can read someone's body language, and then I think you know, like, yes, this is a time where I'm going to listen. Yes, this is a time where like there might be a point here where I can tell she's going to ask for advice. And then every once in a while, I think there are those times where I can tell you're running hot. And sometimes I'm like, that's when I might interject and be like, you need to bring it down. And
Telling a woman to be quiet.
no, not telling a woman to be quiet, but telling you like I can tell you're really angry.
Yeah,
Like, and
no,
you
I
need
know.
to
It's
like,
very obvious when I'm upset.
and like you need to
I
just
don't hide
Well, you
my
need, like,
emotions.
and you're like, I'm just
at
gonna
all.
I'm just gonna burn the whole fucking world down. And it's like, no, like
Sometimes
just like
that's how I feel.
no, right. And I think there are times where I realize like it's rolling the dice in those times where I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna tell you to like take a breath and like relax, and you can keep talking about this, but like you're so angry that you're not thinking through the problem anymore.
Yeah,
Now
sure.
you're just like breathing fire on it.
Sure.
But
I've never done that before though.
again, that comes with effort. You have to be willing to try and have those conversations. I don't know what else do you want to touch on, or do you think
I feel like we've covered the general bases. I just think like if you are a parent or a child looking to kind of figure out like, hey, maybe I want to come to my parents about something or talk to them about something, and you don't have the sort of cadence that we have. I think my dad made a really good point, which is just that I think maybe start with small things.
Right.
Like go to them for like honestly like innocuous things. So like if you fucking hate the advice you get, then it's like sort of like no crying over spilt milk. Like nothing, no.
Don't ask for anything major, because then when you don't accept the advice, you're not hurting anybody's feelings.
Yeah, right.
You're not making any big
ask
changes.
little things so that they all add up day after day, and then eventually, if you want to talk to your parents about something really big, it doesn't feel like this sudden hard shift in your relationship. It feels like, oh, well, like my kid has been coming to me more and more about like stuff in their life. And honestly, if you don't want your parents' opinion, that's also completely fine. But we're talking about like if you want to have a good relationship with your parents where you can get advice from them and you can have sort of this open line of communication. Because for me, it's been like a lifesaver. When I've been in really hard places in my life where I didn't feel like I could go to anybody about anything, I always knew like, well, my parents.
Sure.
I can go to my parents. Maybe it's a sibling, maybe it's a different family member for other people. But like for me, it's like, I've always known, because we've had a relationship where I could go to you about most anything. I trusted you guys to like respect and listen to me in good times and in bad. I've just always known like, okay, my parents are like my like support system here, my lifeline.
Yeah, I think it's treat your kids like they're people, treat your parents like they're people. And the more that you recognize that and start to foster and build that relationship, the easier these conversations become. And,
Absolutely.
And before you know it, like you have a friendship that's built on trust and respect and communication, which is what most relationships are built on.
All right. Well, if you guys have any questions or you want us to talk about this or other aspects of our adult parent-child relationship, leave a comment on a YouTube video or send us an email at fatherdaughterexperience@gmail.com. As always, you can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts and at fatherdaughterexp on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, etc., soon to be Facebook. If you guys have any ideas for us, leave a little comment on our socials. Like, follow, and subscribe, and share if you like today's episode.
Yes. We'll talk to you later, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.